John Weber for AM Best TV, and I'm speaking today to Mick Moloney, a partner and the global head of insurance and asset management practice at Oliver Wyman. Mick, so glad you could join us today.
John, delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mick, you're going to be moderating a panel at this year's International Insurance Society's Global Insurance Forum. Now, the panel is called Resetting the Agenda. Who's going to be on that panel, and what are some of the agenda items that you'll be discussing?
So we will have three panelists, all of whom are kind of CEOs of kind of global and international businesses. We'll have the CEO of Peak Re, an Asia-based life, health, and P&C insurer. We'll have the CEO of Allianz's global commercial P&C businesses, and the international CEO of Fairfax. So we'll have a nice mix, I think, in terms of geographies and sectors, maybe with a little bit of a skew to P&C. And as you said, the title of the panel is Resetting the Agenda, and the title of the conference overall is Insurance Transformation. So I think we'll be talking a lot about the themes that we're seeing play out as insurance businesses look to adapt to what is a very dynamic and ever-changing environment.
So, Mick, you mentioned pertinent themes. What are some of those pertinent themes?
I think on the property and casualty front, obviously the very dynamic market pricing cycles, the concern about will we see a softening beyond some of the areas where we've seen it so far, and what reaction should be to that. In more developed markets, particularly the US, fairly rampant claims inflation driven by things like what's commonly referred to as social inflation, but also legal system abuse, depending on who you're speaking to about it. Then, as I know, we're going to talk about the impact of Gen AI, capital and reinsurance capacity. I think renewal this year was a little better than last year, but cat's still an issue. A lot around climate and sustainability, and again, depending on region, how to position for the transition, or also position for taking advantage of some of the dislocation that's occurring as capital kind of retreats from some of the more carbon intensive sectors. On the life side, I think how to position for growth globally in what are kind of very well developed markets. Asset management, lots going on in terms of continuing movement to passive, continuing kind of move from public to private. So a very rich and dynamic landscape, John. I think so. Lots to discuss.
Sounds like a terrific panel. Now, given everything that's going on in the world right now, Mick, and you throw in the turmoil in the Middle East, do you see the role of insurance evolving?
Yeah, I think the role of insurance is always evolving, and it depends a little bit as to whether you focus on the kind of life, retirement, and health sector, or the property and casualty sector. I think the property and casualty sector is the one that is most directly affected by kind of geopolitical events and the kind of risks that kind of affect insured portfolios. I think and it's not necessarily driven just by recent events, but the P&C industry, as you know, has been in pretty good shape in some respects, in that there have been kind of very hard markets from a kind of pricing perspective. Returns are up, capital is pretty freely available. There's lots of dynamism in terms of growth areas like cyber and a burgeoning set of things that can occur, particularly when that's added to Gen AI and everything that's going to see in the current environment. I think there's a lot that's happened over the last number of years in terms of supply chain disruption and a focus on resilience, and obviously the kind of turmoil is throwing that into sharp relief. I think on the life and health side, which is a little bit more sheltered from that, the focus in developed markets is really on where to reach for growth, and there's a lot happening, particularly if you account for some of the private equity movements on the space and the entry of some of the asset-backed kind of insurers into that space. So I'm sure we'll touch on all those.
So your background is asset management, Mick. How do you see asset management strategies changing as a result of economic conditions?
Well, I think everybody has a much closer eye, I would say, on inflation, the kind of rate environment, relative returns between public and private capital. A concern, I think, about entering into volatility and what that means in terms of asset liability kind of matching and mismatching Still a very significant growth in use of private assets. I think across the across the spectrum, particularly in life portfolios, where that's a competitive advantage and almost a necessity. And there's good and bad to that. I think rates being up is good in many parts of the spectrum. Rates and inflation being up is good in many parts in terms of demand. It just causes complexities then in the asset portfolio in terms of ALM, capital management, and being careful about also capital investment decisions.
Are you seeing adjustments in asset allocation?
We are at the margin. I don't think anything that's occurring has caused anybody to change what they're doing wholesale. I think there are, you know, questions being asked about, the right mix between public and private particularly in bond portfolios. Questions being asked about how surplus should be invested heading into a very volatile environment. Questions being asked about the ability in more long duration portfolios to hedge inflation and how that should look for insurers. But I wouldn't say we're seeing anything by way of sharp changes. More just an evolution rather than anything more than that.
I have to assume there will be a lot of talk around artificial intelligence at the forum, being that AI seems to be the topic du jour. Is AI really going to live up to all the hype that it's getting?
I'd say we're still in the early innings on that one, John. I think, look, you're exactly right. Everybody is thinking about it. Everybody is focused on it. I would say, I don't know any insurer that's a client of ours that hasn't got a number of pilots kind of running. I think the early areas of focus are around a number of things. I would say, where can I use it to increase efficiency, particularly in underwriting and claims management? Where can I use it to augment decision making? Again, underwriting being a particular focus there for asset managers, kind of research and application of research. And a lot then also on the marketing side of things in terms of, can I use it for better customer segmentation, micro segmentation, and understanding customer behaviors? And in general, a desire to have experimentation going on, albeit with, concerns and careful management around privacy and cyber risk. So I don't see a scenario where it's not transformational. I think the question is, will it be transformational in a way that disrupts the relative positioning of insurers? And I think we have lots of people keeping a close eye on that and figuring out where they want to play. I will say, we published a recent piece of research looking at the relative exposure of different industries to AI and the disruptive impacts of AI. And I think insurance and asset management is certainly at the top end of that exposed set. So I think it'll be important for management teams to keep an eye on that, and we're keeping a close eye as we move.
It's going to be interesting to see. So, Mick, what do you hope to take away from this year's forum?
I'm interested to spend some time, particularly in Singapore, with a bit more of an Asia Pac flavor to things. As you know, John, there are a lot of growth geographies there that I think feel different to some of the more mature European and American geographies. It'll be nice to get a sense of the energy and what the local markets are seeing. I think it's always nice to spend time with clients, and this is the first in-person IAS conference since the pandemic kicked off. So it'll have a very energetic feel to it, I think, and then it's just very nice to really tour around the region subsequently. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the trip.
Mick, have a great conference. Great to speak with you today.
Thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it.
That was Mick Moloney, a partner and global head of insurance and asset management at Oliver Wyman. And I'm John Weber for AM Best TV.